Hi, my name is Alison Tupperwine, and in German my name loosely translated means jug of wine. It's in my blood, it's my heritage, I love wine. Well, today we're going to learn from a winemaker at Martha Clara's Vineyard on the North Fork of Long Island, New York. We're going to throw out pretension, we're going to uncork possibilities and have a whole lot of fun. So let's get those bottles popping. We're in Martha Clara's Vineyard, where it doesn't look like a lot is going on, but of course the man of the hour, and that is winemaker Juan Michelli Martinez. Now what is going on? Because there's not a lot of grapes on the vines.
Yeah, at this point of year, we've pruned the vines back, and what we're left with is our canes, which are right here on the wire. And what's actually happening is we're waiting for growth to begin. By late April, early May, these vines will begin to sprout new growth at that time. So it's a pretty quiet time this time of year. However, there's a lot of things that are still going on in the vineyard.
So from here, then what takes place?
From here, the vines, for our state reserve, the vines would grow, they'd start to produce fruit, and we typically harvest our fruit by late October. Fruit would then be hand harvested and brought to the winery at that time.
We are in one of several wine tasting rooms. One, you've got the end-all be-all, your Reserve Merlot. What makes a Merlot a Merlot or a Cab a Cab?
This is a question I typically get, and I often refer back to other fruits. Think of apples. You know, what makes a Granny Smith and a Red and Delicious a Red and Delicious? I mean, they're both apples, but they have different, unique flavors. And it's the same thing with wine grapes. What
gives it its flavors? What am I going to be tasting?
Well, let's give it a try.
Okay, so I just took a sip. Tastes great. Very smooth. It's not I guess it's a strong wine because it's a Merlot, but it's not too strong of a Merlot.
And that's one of the great things about Merlot, is that it has very elegant tannins, especially a wine. This is our 2004 State Reserve Merlot. I think we're going to take a trip over to the winery, and I'm going to show you where the whole winemaking process begins and how we can actually get to this point in the bottle.
Well, Juan, we are now in the tank room and I'm starting to smell the wine. What process is this?
Well, right now we're in the tank room. This time of year is when we're doing all of our rackings of wine. So now the fermentation has actually been completed. The wine in the barrel has had about 3 months of aging, and that's allowed for some settling to occur. Think of orange juice with the pulp. What actually happens is, if you take that orange juice with the pulp, you shake it up, you'll see overnight that all that what we call lees will actually settle to the bottom. So what we're starting to do now at this time is to take the clean juice out of the container, which is the barrel in this instance, bring it into the tank, and then we go ahead and we actually clean the barrels. And then the wine will then return back into barrel.
So the first step of making this a state reserve is the macerating and the fermentation time. Let's see what else is next. So this is the barrel room. Obviously it stores barrels, but tell us a little more.
Yeah, so fermentation is completed over in the tank room. What then happens, we drain off the wine from the skins and the seeds. We'll then squeeze those skins and seeds to get a little bit more wine out of them. That typically gets separated.
All you can.
Yes, the stuff that comes by itself is what we call free run. That will go towards one set of barrels, and then the stuff that we actually have to squeeze out of the grapes we call press fraction, because we're having to press it out. That gets separated off. So what then happens is it will then get transferred into barrel for barrel aging. And right over here, you can see we have some of our barrels here. And typically, what happens is every 3 months, the wine is taken out of barrel, which is what we call racking. So what happens is after 3 months, we pump the wine out of the barrels and we leave about a gallon of wine behind. And that will have what we call lees, and it's just a heavier sedimentation. The wine comes out of the barrels, and then the barrels are cleaned, and the wine is subsequently returned once the barrels have been cleaned, and we'll do that for another 3 months.
Okay, so the important question, do I get to drink yet?
Yes, we absolutely can. I'll grab us some
Okay.
glasses and we can start tasting. All right, well, I've selected a couple barrels here for us to taste.
Yay, my favorite part.
Here's a glass for you.
So what am I supposed to be tasting?
At this point, we're looking at the color of the wine. Once again, what we're doing is we're giving the wine a good swirl, creating that vortex, and we want to get our nose in there to smell what the wine actually holds. Also, when we're tasting this, you're going to see that this wine is, again, it's like a teenager. It has a lot of energy. It hasn't settled down yet. So this wine's going to have a lot of grip to it on the palate. If you remember when we were tasting the Estate Reserve Merlot before, the tannins on that were very silky, very elegant. When you taste this wine, you're going to get a better understanding of what I'm talking about, how these tannins are still developing.
I definitely can tell a difference. The Estate Reserve, when it's in the bottle, is much, much more sophisticated, as you mentioned. And that's not a word that I would typically use when talking about wine, but I think that definitely sums it up. And thank you so much, Juan. It was such a pleasure today. I cannot wait until we start uncorking some Martha Clara Estate Reserve.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. It was such a pleasure getting to meet Juan. Anytime that I can pick the brain of a winemaker and be able to drink it along with him, it's kind of like meeting a parent with their child or an artist with their painting. It's his baby, something that he's grown and he's worked hard on and developed. And it was really a privilege. Now, of course, today we're going to finish up and make a wonderful meal. A lot of people get very, very nervous when pairing wine with food. So good. I can really taste that chocolate that Juan was talking about. So for today's meal, we're going to do basically 2 different dishes. Something earthy, like mushrooms. We've got 3 different types of mushrooms, beans, asparagus, and then sun-dried tomatoes. Now that's gonna go really great. Those are earthy flavors. That's gonna go really great with this wine. Also, you've got the starch in the beans and the starch in the gnocchi. Also, for a different take on it, we've got something as simple as a steak. It's a cowboy steak, which I'm from Texas. Yeehaw! It is a bone-in ribeye, for those of you who aren't familiar with a cowboy steak cut. So let's start cooking. We've got some olive oil, and we're just going to coat the pan, and garlic. And when you add garlic to the beginning of a meal, it adds more of a subtle garlic flavor than at the end of the meal when you're cooking. So we're gonna let that cook for a little bit. And then over here, we're going to do the steak. So we're gonna take some butter. Ooh, it's starting to sizzle. And onions. Ah, I love to listen to things that sizzle. In any good steak, it should always sizzle. And the garlic's cooking up. You're gonna wanna wait until it's nice and golden brown. The trick to a nice golden brown garlic is to get them in the same pot at the same time so that as the temperature rises, they cook together. And it also is a great way to mold the 2 flavors, the olive oil, which I use for anything, even in brownies or cookies, as well as mix that garlic in and have a great taste. And it's really starting to cook up. I swear, I will never have any vampires in my back. They will all go away with all the garlic in me. So we've got shiitake mushrooms, we've got baby bellas, and then we've got white mushrooms here. And you just add all three together and cook those up once the garlic is nice and golden. Remember, these mushrooms are kind of like a sponge, so you might need to add a little more olive oil. And You definitely do not want to add salt when you're cooking the mushrooms. It makes them tough and chewy. But there is nothing better than sauteed mushrooms. And when you saute them like this, especially the baby bellas, people that don't like mushrooms, a lot of people, anytime that I've sauteed them for them, they love baby bellas or portobello mushrooms sauteed. There's just something about that flavor that even people that don't really like the mushroom flavor really do enjoy. So all of these mushrooms, the 3 different types of mushrooms, are really going to add an incredible flavor and really pair well with the Martha Clara Estate Reserve wine. If this meal doesn't cook up quick enough, I may just get a little tipsy. And if you're in the kitchen and you're home alone, you're not driving, it's okay to do that a little bit. Just make sure that the kids are home and they're safe and you don't get too wild. But a little fun is great. So the onions are really coming up real nice. They're all saturated in that butter that we added right at the beginning. And this is going to make for a great steak. Nothing goes well with steak other than wine and sauteed onions. Oh, this is just, the smell is intoxicating. Pun intended. You know, tasting the wine now, it really makes me appreciate it a lot more, having been in the tank room and going out to the actual vineyard and seeing the vines and talking to Juan about all of his hard work and love that he put into it. So right about now is a great time to add, the mushrooms are looking great, so we want to add the rest of the ingredients to make this sauce. We're going to add the beans, the white beans. And we've got asparagus that are chopped up. I love asparagus. It smells really good, tastes really good. And then we've got the beautiful sun-dried tomatoes. Now these are already marinated in olive oil, so they're softened up. If you had dried sun-dried tomatoes, then you'd need to actually cut them up because they're gonna be too dry and tough just to add as a whole. Oh. And then we want to deglaze with chicken broth. I cook pretty much everything with chicken broth. And while this is actually now going to cook down, and while it's cooking down, we're going to add the gnocchi. These are store-bought gnocchi and they're really easy. What you're going to do is you're going to add them to the pot, and it's just like pasta, even though they're potato-filled gnocchi. As soon as they're done, they're going to flop up, kind of pop up like shrimp would, and they're done. Really, really easy. So you don't really have to spend a lot of time nurturing after them. We're going to stir this, just make it, allow it to cook down just a little bit more. So I'm going to add a little seasoning to everything. And of course, the best salt that you can possibly get is kosher or sea salt. It's good for, much better at least, than iodized salt. And it also adds such a wonderful fragrance and aroma and taste to every dish. And the best pepper, I believe, comes from a pepper grinder. It just makes the taste of the pepper so much more fresh. Now the gnocchi is starting to pop up, so we definitely want to get it out of there because it is ready. And we're just going to add it to this wonderful sauce meal in a pot. So we're just getting the remainder out, and this is almost done. A wonderful all-in-one pot. So while that is reducing, continuing to reduce, we're going to get the steak in. And we need to season it first with a little pepper and a little salt action there. And I like my steaks